Today we're going to be talking about drum bus EQ. So your drum bus is an essential part of any song, making sure that you have strong percussion, provides the groove for the song. And so we're going to be talking about how to emphasize that through EQ and making sure that you have amazing, punchy, sometimes aggressive drum bus inside of your mix. So without any further ado, let's dive in.
Part of this series that I'm doing, I also created 2 different guides for you to help you out as you're moving forward in your journey of mixing systematically. So the first one is going to be an EQ guide, which gives you all of the basic understanding of where the areas of interest when you're EQing each and every single instrument. This is just a guideline, but it also gives you some tools that you can use to understand what's actually wrong with your instruments and your tracks as you're diving into EQing various instruments. And then the second guide is a guide on compression. This is basically a 101 guide on what compression is and how to use it effectively. It goes through the 4 styles of compression so that you can understand exactly what I'm talking about throughout this series. So make sure you pick up both of those guides. You can find the link right below this video, or you can go to mastering.dinosaurdogstudio.com. So we're just starting with EQ in this mix. We're going to start with our drum bus because it's the most really kind of complex, covers the most frequency spectrum of anything else in the mix. And so we're going to clean that up first and then move along our way into the more simple instruments that are either a single instrument, don't take up very much room in the frequency spectrum, or are otherwise easier than the drum bus. When we're dealing with EQ, we have the same exact process that we follow for every single thing that we ever EQ, whether that's a drum bus, the mix bus, to just a simple snare or vocal part. The first part is we're going to just listen to the track. The second step is we're going to establish an intention that we want to bring out in that track, whether it's going to be make it more aggressive, bring it forward in the mix, fill it out because it's a little bit weak, etc. Just establish what we actually want to accomplish with our EQ for that instrument. The next step is to actually make those changes to try to achieve that intention that we've already established. Number 4 is to gain stage our EQ. This is extremely important. You don't want to forget to gain stage your EQ. And then the last step is to A/B test it to make sure that the change that we made actually sounds good in the context of the mix. Well, let's start diving in. The most important thing when we're dealing with EQ is to never listen to anything in solo. Never EQ in solo. In order to get around some of the struggles that a lot of people have with EQ when they're first starting is that they can't hear the instrument they're EQing. Well, that's not always necessary, to be honest. The easiest way to be able to hear the instrument that you're dealing with is to just boost it. So I'm just going to move my drum bus up about 5 decibels. So that's going to be the loudest thing in the mix, and I can clearly hear it, but I can still get the context of everything around it. And then the second thing I'm going to do as we dive into the EQ is I'm going to turn the entire mix into mono. So this is just a gain plugin on the stereo out. I can go ahead and flip that to mono. So now my entire mix is in mono. So we're going to follow that 5-step process in order to EQ our drum bus. Now that we've flipped our mix into mono, we'll add an EQ to our drums, and let's get started. We're just going to listen to the song. I've already turned up the drums, so listen to the drums and let's determine what we actually want to accomplish with the drums inside of this mix, and then we'll match that intention to a specific EQ change to achieve that intention. My initial impression of the drums is that I do have quite a bit of bottom end already in the drums, so I don't really feel like I need to boost the bottom too much. If anything, I might have a little bit too much, and so I might think about doing a gentle curve here just on the low end to try to clean up anything that's in the really low subs that's going to impact my mix later on. And then the next thing I notice is that the drums feel kind of dark, so I want to brighten them up a little bit. And then lastly, I also feel they're a little bit low, mid, heavy, but there's just some kind of muddiness that is making the drums kind of hard to really hear clearly. And so I'm going to try to clean that up as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is just do a gentle high pass filter here at the bottom to try to clean up the bottom end. And then I'm going to add some top end to try to bring out some of the clarity in the drums, some crispiness, so we can hear them clearly. One general rule of thumb that I use for my buses is I never boost anything more than 3 decibels or cut anything more than 3 decibels. Just as a rule of thumb, this prevents me from going too extreme on anything, on any one instrument, and allows me to avoid over-processing my tracks from the first step. Because again, I'm going to do a little bit more processing on these instruments, and so I'm not going to be able to fix all of the issues with, say, the snare or the kick drum in just this one EQ on the drum bus. But I can put the whole bus in the right direction so that it makes those additional moves later easier. Now that we've established our goal for this track, let's dive into actually changing this curve to match those intentions. Now that I made those changes, I cut off a little bit of the low end to get a little less flub in the low end. I boosted the top end in order to bring out some of the crispiness of the drums. I also made this slight boost around 3K just to bring the drums forward in the mix a little bit to try to make them really the center of attention in terms of what is forward inside of the mix. And then I also made this cut to try to reduce some of that mud that I was hearing. So just initially, I like the changes that I made, but the next step is to actually gain stage this. So because we boosted and cut, we want to make sure that our before and after volumes are the same. In order to do this, we will grab our level meter and we want to use average volume. You can use LUFS too if you want, but I just think this is easier to use just a normal volume meter. But use average volume or RMS because that is going to feel the same to the human ear. We don't hear in peak volume, we hear in average volume. So this is going to allow us to not feel like before or after is louder or softer than the other. Now that we've established our EQ curve, let's turn that off, see what our volume is at before and after, and then adjust our gain on our EQ accordingly. Okay, so it looks like it's around minus 25 RMS. So let's turn our EQ on. So it looks like it's about a half a dB too quiet. So I'm gonna boost that. Now I can A/B it. When I'm going to A/B it, this is a very technical process, I am going to hit play on the track. I'm gonna click this a whole bunch of times so that I don't know whether it's on or off with my eyes closed. And then I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to switch it on and off and decide which one I actually like better. By closing your eyes, you're not going to be distracted with all the shiny colors on the screen, and your brain will actually lean on your ears more than you would if you're actually looking at it, your screen. There's a lot of research behind sensory deprecation enhances your other senses, even temporarily. So it's not, you don't need to go blind to be able to hear this, but if you just close your eyes, it will help you actually be able to hear the differences more. Yeah, so I do like this change more. I can just feel that kind of sharpness of the drums really coming out. It's less muddy. I think that all the intention that I had initially set out to achieve with the drum bus is really achieved with this EQ. So I am gonna give this the thumbs up and we're gonna move on. That is how to EQ your drum bus. Do not copy my EQ curve one for one. Your drums are probably different than mine. You might need to have a different curve, or you will likely need a different curve to achieve the same results or even better results. With that said, so remember the 5-step process to actually EQ your song is to first listen to your track within the context of the mix, determine your intention for that track or part, actually make the changes with your EQ to match your intention, gain stage your EQ, and then A/B it to make sure it sounds good. If you get to the end of the process, you A/B it, and you decide you like it better without the EQ curve, then you can either start from the beginning, set your intention again, make the changes, and then try to get a better result. Or maybe that track just doesn't actually need EQ. You might be surprised how often you actually don't need to EQ an instrument or part inside of your song. So the A/B portion of this is critical to make sure that you're making the best decisions and not just over processing things because you feel like you should. With that said, thanks for watching. Look out for the next video because we're gonna continue on this EQ train and we're gonna EQ this entire mix. The next up will be the bass guitar.